We're recording.
So,
illumisoft podcast number 6.
Right.
I'm Dan Prince.
I am Matt Heelan. It is August the 21st, 2020.
Almost election time.
Right. Almost my favorite time of year, which is fall. Autumn.
It's been feeling like fall
All right, this week.
all summer.
Yeah.
Well, not all summer.
Last
but
week especially.
Yeah. Yeah, and election year.
Yeah.
So Democratic National Convention ended yesterday. Joe Biden
Right.
gave a pretty American speech.
Yeah.
Looking forward to hearing the Republican National Convention starting tonight.
Oh, it starts tonight.
I think it starts tonight. Might be tomorrow night. No,
Yeah.
it would be tonight.
Yeah.
Wouldn't start on the weekend for sure, right?
No.
So that's where we are.
Right.
Protests still occurring all over the country. But I don't really know what they're doing anymore. I don't know if they're organized protests for any known reason. I think it's just people like, yeah, hell yeah, let's protest. What are we protesting?
I did read the review of the Biden speech, and they had mentioned that he has this plan that is totally different in terms of how to deal with a pandemic than what currently Trump has implemented. I don't know what the details of that are, but it would be kind of interesting to see what he would do differently. So,
yeah, I don't know. I imagine look at the numbers and do it scientifically.
right.
You know what I've noticed, and this isn't a criticism of Trump at all, and I hope it doesn't sound like it is, but it might be construed as that. The other day, I was watching news clips of presidential meetings and other current events in politics, and I forget who it was, but it was a well-known reporter, Republican reporter, sat down with Trump and had a one-on-one. And they disagreed about a lot of things. So they both continued to sit there, and Trump numerous times yelled back to his team to get him the numbers so that he could prove to this guy that he was right.
Is this the Axios interview?
No, I think it was Charlie.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. Do you know his name? For our listeners?
His name escapes me, but
yeah. Anyway, one of the things that he said was that we are the 7th worst state in the nation, I think, for mortality rates. And Trump said, no, we're not. We're actually the best. And somebody handed him a piece of paper that he turned around and said, see, we're the best.
Oh, I did. That was the God, what was his name? Anyway, go on.
The reporter.
Yeah. Chris Wallace.
Yeah. So I thought it really did concern me that somebody would hand him that information. Where are they getting these numbers that convince Trump that he's doing such, great things with the pandemic and such great things with his base? Because another argument they got into or disagreement they had was about the numbers in the polls. He said, Joe Biden's beating you by 12 points. This is yesterday. I watched this, so it might have been 3 days old at most. But and Trump said, no, hell no, I'm not. And give me the numbers, and tried to prove that too. So my point is that I wonder, Trump's a hard ass, right? Fired, right? He's known for this. And I wonder if those people that give him those numbers aren't just catering to I'm not telling him what he doesn't want to hear, because he will shoot the messenger.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. But it's not a criticism of him. It's just an observation, I guess, of the situation.
Well, and I think when you tell that story, I always think of the experience of being in a company dealing with the C-level executives, in small business, and when I was at RSI, and it's difficult to engender people that work for you to be honest sometimes with you. You've got to really convey a message that you're open to hearing adverse opinions about. But if you're not sending that message, then you're going to surround yourself with people that just want to tell you, you're right.
Here's some numbers to prove it.
Right. And luckily, the successful leaders that I've worked with, Dan, have always been open to. They've conveyed enough to me to say, I am comfortable hearing adverse opinions, and they don't always listen to them, but they are at least sending you the message that they're open to listening. So
yeah, I'm all about it. I put out or tried to put out that message before, and had people come at me with some off the wall stuff that just didn't make any sense.
Right.
And you got to smile and say, okay, all right, good idea.
Right.
Or maybe not good idea. I hate lying to people if it's not a really good idea. Okay, I hear you.
Right.
We will take that into consideration. And then the heck was he thinking or she?
Yeah, we got a lot of, I have this one story I can remember from RSI RSI was owned by Bob and Chuck Cash, and there was at the time about 200 employees there. And one day, as people would do, they would stand at the 18th and Walnut where you are at with WeWork, right?
Right.
And we were on the 7th floor of that building. And every morning we had this crew of people that would get there really early, and they would all peer out the windows and look down, like when people would show up to work and stuff. And one day Chuck showed up, and he had a brand new car.
Yeah.
And we had just announced a week or so before that we were going to give like 3% raises to everyone.
As opposed to big raises?
Right.
Like 3% is kind of
all right,
normal.
And so people just lurched onto that. They're like, well, apparently Chuck's got enough money to get a new car. And it just didn't occur to people that it wasn't appropriate, right? To
draw those conclusions.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, Chuck may be saving every last penny he ever earned. And, we don't know what the circumstances are, right? Don't equate your 3% raise to Chuck getting a new car as they're one and the same kind of thing, right? And so it was a week long in my role of having meeting after meeting with employees to explain to them.
Disgruntled over him getting a new car. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
Isn't it? Yeah. So
what kind of company did you work at, man?
A very petty one at times.
I'm starting to see a pattern. I'm kidding.
Right. So not to change topics too quickly, but I was listening to this podcast, and I had some questions that came to mind for just relative to that. So it's a podcast called In Machines We Trust. It's by MIT Technology Review Team. Mm-hmm. And the entire podcast is just about the automation of everything is what they call it. And the first podcast they talk about is facial recognition and just that technology. And it occurred to me, and of course it's less so now that we're not, downtown traveling all the time, but do you know how many times that your face is probably recognized in a given day?
I'm going to guess most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm because you drive down the freeway, they can see in the cars. Right. They know who's driving them. You walk down the streets, same thing. There are multiple cameras pointed at you or absorbing you. Right. Not pointed at you, but pointed in a direction in which you're on it at all times. I don't even know, I'm alone in this office most of the day, but I don't know that I'm not on camera here either from across the street or near the elevators. I don't see the cameras, but I live my life as though I am on camera all the time because chances are you are.
So they tell a pretty frightening story in the podcast about a guy who's he's a black man, and facial recognition based on your skin type, based on your age, based on light and darkness has difficulty really matching. Mm-hmm. But apparently Detroit Police Department has the ability to run facial recognition, and they had run it on a crime where somebody had broken in and stole some jewelry.
Okay.
And they matched it to this guy who they thought it was. They called him up and they said, please come and turn yourself into the police department. And he said, for what reason? And they said, well, we think you've been in the commission of a crime, and we've caught you. And he said, well, then come arrest me. And
Makes sense.
they did. And they came and arrested him, and it turned out that it wasn't him.
Good story.
Yeah, it is a good story. What's frightening about it is that Detroit Police Department had to change their tactics after that, because they were using it to pursue people who had committed a crime, and said that it was not accurate enough that they could use it for that mechanism. So now what they're using it for is more easier things than, maybe less severe crimes, I guess they're still using. But the stat that they threw out in the podcast, it was also weird, was they said that over half of the adult population in the country has somewhere stored their face somewhere.
Only half?
Yeah.
Well, you said over half. So how much over half? I would guess, over the age of 5, probably 95% of us have.
Right. But then thinking of where that's stored, like one of the things that they were doing was matching crime photos to a database of driver's licenses. Right.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to imagine how it is that my face gets scanned and where all that is stored at. Right. So we assume that your face is being recognized when you're walking around a city. It's being captured, it's being stored, but then who else has access to that data about me, which is my face?
Well, it gets creepier. There's a huge trunk that goes across the ocean,
right.
Several of them, many of them. And there's rumors, and it makes sense that it could be that there is a splitter in each and every one of them that makes a copy of the data. Basically, it's optical data. So if you put a mirror there, you can send the data on its way while also copying that same traffic somewhere else. Rumors have it that the companies that lay down these lines have access to all of the data that has been sent or have the ability to access it. Whether they're actually storing it or not, who knows? But the fact that they could copy it quite easily means there's nothing safe. There's nothing sacred. The only thing that we can do to save ourselves at this point, have any digital privacy, is to encrypt everything, right? And give somebody a key to be able to access our data. But even that isn't very secure, because we're not allowed the encryption that we can have, because the government can't break into it if we do have
So
it.
do you think that there are some countries, and there's been some discussions about it in the States here, but do you think there should be like a national privacy?
I absolutely do. I think right now
like
there
a
should,
bill or something that says,
well, not just national, I think worldwide, because the internet is not constrained by borders, right? To a very small extent, you can filter things out within a certain geographical reason, but there's nothing that says that once it crosses the border into the United States, we have jurisdiction over that data, because it could just be flying through here to go somewhere else. Right now, we need a world agreement, if you will, or a standard, a social standard that we set, that we say this is wrong to do it, so that anybody that does it, any companies that do it, at some point will be found out, and we'll know, oh, you've been stealing from us. But first we have to come to the conclusion as a society that it is theft. We haven't even gotten there yet.
Right.
But even beyond that, that's just personal privacy data,
right,
which may or may not be important. Right. I'm sure it's important to the person that had their identity stolen.
Right.
I'm sure it's important to the people that have had a disadvantage because somebody had access to their data. But for the vast majority of it, that's not true. Right. My data is all over the place. And I at one time have had a incident where my data was taken. And you want to know where it was? This interesting twist. I went to work for CSC doing a project, Fort Leavenworth. And in order to get that job, I had to get secret clearance. And so I had to fill out all of that stuff, including an iris scan, including fingerprints, everybody I knew, social security number, any other, just everything. You know how invasive that is.
Sure.
Well, I finished that job. A couple of years later, I get a notification that they had been hacked and that data had been stolen.
Oh.
So somewhere out there is everything about me. What can you do? You know what they did? The government, they gave me 2 years free on this identity protection program. 2 years.
Yeah. Locked, whatever.
Anyway, I was going to say, what we need in society together too is more than just privacy, an understanding of what our privacy should be, an agreement. But also we need to figure out a way to socially stamp down misinformation, right? And Jordan Peterson, well, it wasn't Jordan Peterson. I forget who it was. Tom Bilyeu podcast does on YouTube, Conversations with Tom, and he was talking to somebody about the end of the world coming, right? Which actually the conversation wasn't about that, but in that conversation he talked about the reason why we've gotten to this point where data is just, misinformation is just blasted out there because it can be, and nobody can prove it wrong. So there's no stopping it, right? If you don't like reality as it is, just tell everybody it's different. And you're changing reality as you do that. And if you have a lot of money and you spend a lot, you can make reality whatever you want it to be to the majority of the world, because that's all they're going to see. And Facebook algorithms, not just Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all of them tend to give you what you want. So if you look at something and you comment on it or like it or retweet it or share it with your Facebook friends, it's an indicator to these social networks of what you want to see, and they want to give you what you want to see. Unfortunately, it's to the exclusion of what you don't want to see, which would give you a much more rounded view of the world. So as a result, even if it's not true, if it matches what you've liked in the past, they'll show it to you. And I think this is part of the reason why we have this polarization of belief systems out there. Because if you think it's red, pretty soon you're going to prove to yourself that it absolutely is red, right? Even if it's not.
Right.
Right.
Right. I guess I want to say California was one of the states that had started a sort of GDPR kind of statewide thing that they were going to do. I don't know what the right answer is, but I do know that there should be some agreement that says, with my data, this is wrong if you take it and do this thing with it. Right. There's just, it has to be fundamentally just basic, right? A basic.
I agree.
Right.
This is my data.
Right.
Period. If you want to use it for anything, you have to go into contract with me to use my data. You have to get my signature. It has to be legally binding, et cetera. That's what I think. And maybe I'm an extremist.
Well, one of the ideas that I heard was that this idea of putting people in control of managing their data, and that you could they would have to pay you to use your data, basically.
Sure.
Right. So if I want to go ahead and let every marketing company sell me their thing, then to give you access to all of my demographics and everything about me that they want to know, well, you've got to pay me.
Yeah. Well, it's always been a trade.
Right.
Right. It's always been this for that. It's just not been an explicit agreement. And that's been the problem, because, hey, we'll give you free Facebook. We don't know what we're giving in return. We're giving a lot. I know there used to be a website builder out there called AngelFire. I don't know if they're still there or if they still have this policy, but AngelFire, back in the 90s, my grandmother was actually doing HTML and posting it out there. And being 80 something years old, she'd make a lot of mistakes and she would come to me and ask, for my help. And so I became familiar with Angel Fire. And one of the things about that type of service is that, yes, we'll give you this free platform to build web pages on, and we'll give you some tutorials on how to do it. But guess what? Every single thing you post on there becomes ours. It's our property now. I'm not sure my grandma understood that, but she didn't really post anything that she would have to worry about anyway. Pictures of her flowers, soil. She was into gardening and that kind of thing. But the fact that because you use their platform, now they own your content and your creation and your creative output,
right,
is ridiculous. And I know a lot of them, Squarespace and a few other ones out there, they claim they don't do that anymore. So maybe that's a move in the right direction.
Right. It's like terms of use, right? Who reads terms of use?
Right.
Right?
Nobody, because they make them so small and so legal and just
Right.
arduous. Even if you do read it, do you understand it?
It's
You
all
gotta be an
written by a
attorney.
lawyer.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think they do that on purpose.
Right.
Although I did see a terms of use one time that was just straightforward and clear. And they said, if you look below, you'll see all of our legal mumbo jumbo, I think was the word they used. Hopefully, if you get an attorney to read it, it will say the same thing. And I thought that was trustworthy.
Right.
That was merit worthy.
Right. I do really like the idea or the topic of privacy and security and all that, because I think me and you've talked about this before, because you have an Echo, right, in your house.
Yes. An Alexa device. I call it Echo.
Yeah. And I just think that the more and more of those types of devices, right, you just think about your daily life of what is listening, what is recognizing my face. And if you were to just go down this list and list out everything where you're interacting with that, I just think that there's going to be more and more of that happening, right? More and more listening and capturing of data.
Yeah, it has to be in order for us to get the benefit that we want out of it.
Right.
That computer like was on Star Trek.
Right. The fact that reportedly that Mark Zuckerberg on his laptop at home has a piece of tape covering his camera.
Zuckerman,
right. Right. So I don't know. I think the one thing I thought of driving in, and Bill of Rights is kind of corny. Privacy rights, whatever we want to call it. I think there may be, maybe I just haven't looked, but there should be a map of Kansas City that says every place there's a camera that could capture your face.
A lot of them are private.
Right. But I'm
So
saying
Ring doorbells, for instance.
Right. But public cameras, right, paid for by you, me, and the taxpayer.
Sure.
There should be a map that says this is where we are in capturing you as you move throughout our city. Because I think that's just fair.
I think it's fair, but I don't think it's going to really give us any kind of insight, because I think the majority of the times that you're on camera, it's private cameras.
Right. Now you're talking about like if I had a business and I got a camera outside or something.
Right. And a lot of businesses put the camera outside, and the police subpoena that data.
Right. But there's a mixture of purpose there. The business owner that has a camera says, it's a security thing. Right. But the fact is that now we're using that for a different purpose than security. We're now going to use that to potentially find out more information about just people that get caught on the camera. Right. In other words, if I'm a business owner and I've got a camera outside and I'm capturing all that data, where's it going?
To the cloud.
Right.
More than likely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now you're inadvertently, you're thinking I'm just doing it so if somebody breaks in, I can, catch them.
Right.
But you're inadvertently sharing all that data in the cloud to the benefit of somebody you didn't even realize.
Right. And it's kind of like I noticed on our CRM earlier. We input a lot of email addresses in our CRM, and now they offer us this brand new feature called prospecting that will find email addresses for us for a fee. Where the hell did they get those emails? Right. I'm guessing they got them from other users.
Right.
And that just seems like it seems ethically wrong. I don't think there's any law against it. And I don't know if it's blatant enough that people will go, hey, stop doing that. But I understand. I don't know that those email addresses are coming from other users of that system, but I suspect they should be, right?
Right. So somewhere in the terms of use, it says, hey, just want to let you know that by entering email addresses into our system, we're sharing that with other people.
I doubt it's just email addresses.
Well,
it's kind of like Angel Fire.
Right.
Once you put it in here, we own it.
Right, which is always the fear with when people were moving towards online CRMs, right? Which was, if my data is now available to whoever, now I have an insight into your company and your business opportunities and your relationships with people and maybe even certain intellectual property that we have a window in if your CRM is in the cloud and gets hacked, right?
Yep.
So, but I think that I think of in the last couple of years, the numbers, and it has kind of gone down, but the number of times that a company had to come out in public and say, our data was hacked, we're going to give you, like you said, free 2 years worth of LifeLock or, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. And people just kind of, like you said, you kind of just go, what am I going to do? Yeah. And I think that's wrong. You should have some ability to, I'm sure you could sue and all kinds of stuff, right? But like to your point, there should be something that says, this is the law that says, if you violate somebody's privacy in this way, their repercussions are the following ways.
Right. Well, so I think the crime,
like credit bureaus is what I was thinking of.
In my opinion, the crime occurs when they decide to store the data, right? Because that makes it hackable. They shouldn't store data that we didn't give them explicit permission to store. They shouldn't store data that isn't absolutely needed to provide the service that we paid for or that we traded to watch ads for, right? And in a way, that's what I feel the trade-off mostly is. Like, yeah, we'll spend time on your website, and yeah, we'll see those ads over there, and I know you're getting revenue for them, but that's a low price to pay, unless you're stealing all of my clicks and activity and everything else so that you can profile me and sell that profile to somebody. So in our case with email addresses, consider this scenario. Let's say that I've been working for a year to build a relationship with the CEO of XYZ company. And I finally, go out and play golf with them, and they give me their phone number, an email address, or, whatever it is that most people don't have. And so I go into my CRM, like, my boss told me I had to, right? You got to put it in the CRM. And I do. And within a week, several other people have now added that person as a lead because our CRM has shared it with them. Clearly that, that CEO, that person is going to have people reaching out to him that he wouldn't have expected were reaching out to him, especially if he keeps his information, his contact information private. Or let's say that he just created a new email address, as a lot of people do, as their old one gets spammed, too spammy. Create a brand new email address, gave it to me and only me. I put it in my CRM thinking it's protected, and now all of a sudden they start getting emails from other vendors. That's in my opinion, that's hugely unethical and could be very damaging to me and my business. But on another front, let's say my competitors go out there. I've put in this single email address that only I have. I have the in with this person, and now all of my competitors can go out there and grab it and start blasting away as well.
Right.
It levels the playing field in a way that isn't fair, right? I did all the work to get the information. I'm the one that built the relationship, and now everybody's got the advantage of that, to my disadvantage.
Right.
It's not fair.
Yeah, it's funny because today, and I know we're kind of now talking about like sales automation, but it's been many, many years since picking up the phone and calling a lead or even now, emailing is still challenging for a number of reasons, but so a lot of the tactics that we use in sales to try and meet people or get a conversation or a meeting with people has kind of changed or evolved. But I told you earlier this week, I had a guy want to chat me on WhatsApp about, and which I thought, oh, okay, whatever. But the one that I got today was really interesting. It was a recorded message that was basically like a cold call. I picked up the phone and it was, "Hi, Matt, I'm so-and-so with this web services company. We've reviewed illumisoft's website. If you have an interest in learning more, just press 1. So,
wow.
Yeah. So it wasn't.
So was your name kind of spliced in, and was it a template email that they just said, "Okay, Matt, we like." Right. We visited your website at illumisoft.com,
right.
Or was it genuine?
It was pretty natural. It was. So we've gotten to the point now where we don't want to make cold calls. So now we've recorded cold calls to send to you.
That's even worse. That's even worse. I don't know what we're evolving into.
It's like how much more lazy. I don't know. Hey,
well, it's not lazy. It's that you really need the numbers. If you think about, I've thought about this a lot for our business. I really think that we provide great value to our clients. But not every person out there with a software development project is a client of mine. They wouldn't be a client of mine. I wouldn't have them as a client of mine because different personalities, different expectations, different way of having a vendor-client relationship, all of that stuff, right? So my clients, the ones that I want, are much harder to find because of that, because I'm not just looking, wide, far and wide, right? I'm trying to find that person. And a lot of my prospecting isn't about, hey, do you have a project? It's about, are you the kind of person that I want to start building a relationship with?
Yeah.
But because of the nature of that, because I've chosen this niche, in a sense, it requires a lot more work to find those people, and which requires automation. And if you're not using automation to do that, then you're going to need a huge team, right? And there's ways of doing it, but we can't, eventually the costs of sales flow into the cost of your services.
Sure.
And I'd like to actually reverse the cost of software development. It has been on a steady rise for a while. It's kind of plateaued at this point, but I would love to reduce it down. I get offers from overseas for, $15, $20 an hour. And that's legit. If, I would definitely look at a person seriously that had experience and could do the work for that price, because why not? But they would have to prove that they could do it. My experience so far, especially with certain areas of the world, is that they're cheap and they're not very good.
Right. Right. Well, I'm just, one of the things that we are still kind of experimenting with is in that automation piece to find those sort of good relationships to build. I know that we've tried this cold email campaign, and I don't know if it's the person we're using, the company we're using to do it. But I will say, and I think this was something maybe you did it intentionally, Dan, or not, but the idea that we hired two companies at the same time and told those companies that we had hired them at the same time. And I wouldn't say we pitted them against one another, because we really didn't do that. We just told them we hired a company to do a similar thing than what you're doing for us.
Right.
We're getting different results from each one. We're just telling you. And maybe if you're slightly competitive like I am, you hear that kind of stuff and you go, I really want to earn this business. I really want to do better. So you try different tactics to try and get better results, right? That's the product of
you
having,
want to win.
Right. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. But what's ended up happening was the social media company we're using, Explode, they have ended up producing through the Sales Navigator campaign more leads
in a shorter amount of time.
Absolutely.
Less intrusion into our prospective clients' lives.
Now, here's the thing, though, that's been a question that I have asked them is there's a limited number of emails you can send in LinkedIn. And they want to be careful about using all those. But my impression is that they have no way to automate that they are literally manually going in and, copying, pasting and all that stuff, right?
I can tell you, though, there is a way to automate it using, browser extensions. You can write yourself. But I don't think it is legal on LinkedIn or in Sales Navigator to do any kind of automation on their site.
Right.
But it begs the question, where does automation, where's the line, right? If let's say that I get to a certain page on LinkedIn and I pop up a menu for you to click that just copies text from, your database store, your template or whatever you want to send into the clipboard. So you get to a certain page and somebody says, hey, Matt, I'd like to hear more. Or let's say that, hey, I'd like to schedule an appointment with you.
Right.
When people contact me on LinkedIn and they say, I'd like to schedule an appointment with you, I give them my Calendly address. I thank them. I do my normal friendly thing and I say, here's my Calendly address. Look forward to talking to you. Now, what if rather than typing all that out, I can just click a button, which moves that same text into my clipboard and then I paste it. So saving me a minute, right? Is that automating LinkedIn? I mean, in my opinion, it's not, but I guess you'd have to take it to court. Somebody.
And I will say this, I told you this week. I think we're fine doing little shout outs to companies that we like. I know we talked earlier about Chat Metrics. We like their sales process and the way it works. So far, the service has been, fine. But that LeadJet company, they're out of Germany. And
LeadJet.io.
Yeah. And I talked to one of their founders and, are
you sure they're out of Germany?
Yeah. Well,
I watched the guy's video and he definitely sounded French.
Yeah. So the guy I talked to is out of Germany. And then there's two other guys that are, in France and some other place, but I think they're like 3 university students.
Yeah. That's an easy extension to write. They've done a good job.
And the guy that I talked to said, here's what happened. He's like, I got hired as an intern to work for this company doing sales and marketing, and they exclusively wanted to do LinkedIn generation. And they said, here's what you got to do. Copy, paste, send.
Yep,
and he's like, there has to be a better way. So him and his technical buddies get together and they go, what about this?
Right.
And I've been using it now for a week and it's, I know I break our sales process down in terms of how we communicate our values to people and save time, a certain amount of ROI, reduce risk. And for me, it matches saves me time. Right. And so, they're still going through like angel investing. So who knows if they're going to be around another.
Why do they need angel investing? I mean, because they want to get more out there faster. It seems like they've done pretty good.
Yeah. I don't know, but hopefully they're going to be around for a while longer, but so far I'm pretty impressed with the ease of use.
That's a browser extension and integration with multiple CRMs. And they've done a pretty good job. But browser extensions aren't that difficult. When I was doing our sales campaign last year, when Adam was here, I wrote my own extension so that when I get to a page, I could grab that text, paste it in, all of those things. And it was relatively simple. The problem came when I got really good at that and I got fast at it. And because, my little helpers made it fast to, in a non-automated way, use Sales Navigator and LinkedIn. But it didn't matter that I wasn't actually automating it to LinkedIn because they're measuring, the way they quantify automation. I now looked like I was using an automated service, even though I wasn't. And I argued with them when I got that message. I sent support and said, no, I'm not. Please stop telling me that and stop doing that. And they said, well, you're only allowed to use that much anyway.
Right.
So they have limits in there, but they change their limits over time, seemingly arbitrarily, because of the demand that's being put on the system by people that maybe are automating or getting really, really fast. If you type 500 words a minute, you can get a lot done.
Right.
But in a way, I think what is needed in that case, and in a lot of cases, is not the automation of the function, but a human assisted, right? Assisting the human that's doing it, right? Don't automate it completely, but assist the human. And so kind of what I proposed a minute ago and what LeadJet has done is that they've just made some tasks that you have to do anyway. They've just made them easier to do.
Right.
But you still have to figure out, what are you going to do? Who are you going to contact? What are you going to say to them? All of that stuff. So any way that we can assist a human being to do a better job interacting with other human beings, I think that's where we're going. And I think also that goes with artificial intelligence.
Right.
I don't think we want machines making decisions. I think we want them determining probabilities, right? And then giving you and I the decision, the decision making, or not you and I, but you got a room full of order processors or whatever. Take out all the mundane stuff, but leave them in control of what actually happens. So assisted AI, I don't know if there might be already a term coined. So
and I know that we've talked previously about differences between machine learning and AI and all that. All I know is that if tomorrow my father is diagnosed with cancer, and
that's a terrible thing to say, man.
And well, I'm just using it as an example.
Yeah.
And I know that through the aggregation of data from hospitals and researchers, that they, to your point, they know that there is a higher probability that this course of treatment will save his life than another. And that comes from all us learning more and more about that disease. I'm all for it.
I am too.
Right.
Exactly. Machine learning. Hey, guess what? I know that you're used to prescribing this medicine in this case, but here's the odds.
Right.
Right. You might be better going this route, or that's what I think we need. Because honestly, as smart as people are and as capable as they are, they're not good at statistics.
Right.
Computers are.
I talked to a woman this week. She runs her own healthcare consulting company, and and we talked about her practice and how technology can help her practice and her clients.
Is this the one with the webinar?
Yeah. And her name was Kelly. Forget her name now. She's with a company in St. Louis called Integrated Care Strategist. And it was funny because since COVID, there's just been this explosion of telehealth solutions. Mm-hmm. And she said to me, interestingly enough, she's like, Matt, I'm so tired of telehealth right now. And so that just gives you a sense of, in their own industry, they're just being overwhelmed with messages and news about telehealth and all the benefits. And I think that's pretty normal, right? Anytime something becomes a trend, right, we all get kind of tired of it for a while. But
telehealth's been around a while. The COVID thing really brought it to the forefront.
Sure.
But like everything else, I think everybody decided to jump on the bandwagon, and now they've made it nauseating.
And what you're seeing, though, is you're starting to see sort of this, which is pretty typical in our capitalistic kind of ways, is that what happens is all across the country and the world, telehealth solutions are just being created. And then what happens is the market consolidates, right? And recently the news that this company called Livongo was bought by Teladocs.
Okay.
And that was what a lot of people reported that this month, that it was the highest telehealth valuation, like $30 billion
Wow.
that they had seen in the healthcare space recently. And the idea of it is that, think of like Uber, right? Uber became the national worldwide provider of mobility, right?
Sure.
And so now there's going to be this national player of telehealth
say in the same mode, right? The Uber was the largest taxi service, travel, I don't know what you would call them, but they were the largest and they owned no cars.
Right.
Well, they probably had a couple cars, but
right.
They didn't. And like Airbnb is the largest hotelier, but they don't own but two properties.
Yeah. So what I mean by that is that the combination of the two companies, what I read was that it's a sign that there's going to, we're going to move out of the small to medium sized players, all the niche telehealth people, and we're going to start moving towards, big, huge, corporations that do it very, very broadly, right?
I mean, I don't know, just because you become the prominent player in a space, like let's talk about Airbnb. They became the prominent hotelier in the world. Do they have a monopoly? Kind of. They're the only people that did it.
Right.
Telehealth isn't necessarily the same, but if you have one that is head and shoulders above the rest, I can see where it would congregate to them.
Right.
But it makes sense that you can't grow as fast as you could unless you had this distributed, right? We don't, if I was going to start a telehealth company, I wouldn't want to own the cubicles and the phones and the people, hire the people. I'd want to own the relationship with the patient or with the hospital that had patients. Right. And I would allow these doctors and telehealth professionals to contract with me and per call. Better Health, the counseling, therapy.
Right.
I'm sure everybody's heard of it, but in case you haven't, Better Help.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's an example of where that's a niche telehealth solution, mental health, right? Mm-hmm. And that people could envision one day a large player absorbing Better Help as their mental health telehealth solution amongst a menu of other telehealth solutions, right?
Sure.
Right. But I mean, I read this article this week about some of the downsides of telehealth, and the article just said, here's the problem. It was great that the Medicare, during the pandemic, Medicare said, we're going to pay doctors for telehealth appointments, right? That was like a big hurdle. But one of the downsides is two things: is rural America and doesn't have the technology to do telehealth appointments, and
they don't have the bandwidth.
No. Yeah, no. And certain seniors don't maybe, quite frankly, know how to operate a computer or have a computer that is fast enough to do a quality online kind of appointment.
I agree. They're going to have to get some help. But I mean, the same is true with any kind of technology. My ex-father-in-law didn't know how to use a cell phone. He didn't actually like to use a push-button phone. He wanted one of those that turned around, the rotary phones, and because that was in his day.
Right.
And as long as I knew him, he had a rotary phone in his house. This is till like the 2000s.
Wow.
So some people just don't want to adopt it no matter whether they have to or not. Now, gas pumps, things like that. If you want to drive a car, you better learn how to operate a gas pump.
Right.
Because the days of full service are no longer. Actually, I think there's a few places that will do it, but technology is disrupting people, and some people are either too old or too tired or just unable to adapt. And what do we do? What do we do about that? We can't help them.
Right.
Somebody should help them.
All right.
Right. I help my mom.
Right.
My mom's pretty technically able, But I mean, a lot of things that just beyond her, and she'll never put forth the effort to figure them out, right? She'll never learn how to code. She'll never learn how to write a web page like my grandma did. But that's because she doesn't really put the effort into that kind of stuff. However, she needs it now, right? Not how to write a web page, but she needs to know how to use this technology. And
well, I told you the story of when the pandemic hit in March. I would say somewhat routinely see my parents. And, I had gone the entire month of March and maybe even longer without seeing my parents. And I live in the south part of Kansas City and they live in the north part of Kansas City. And so I thought, I don't want to expose them, inadvertently. So I sent my mom a Zoom meeting request.
Yeah.
And I got her on the phone and I said, okay, Mom, here's what you do. And so we walked through it and I got her on but just the audio. And she's like, well, I can hear you. And I said, okay, well, we just got one more step here to get the video on. And she had like a little screen pulled down on her camera.
Yeah.
And so she finally figured out she had to raise it up. And then she saw me. And she immediately was like, oh, my hair, I haven't done my hair. So she got all embarrassed. But, I think to your point, we can all be resistant to new technology in our own little ways. But you're right. The minute you have a motivation for learning it to see your kid, right? To see your mom, then you're going to figure it out if you really are motivated to do it. So
there was a lot of people that were motivated to not get on Facebook, in its heyday. I don't know that it's not in its heyday now, but it seems like it's in its decline,
right?
To some degree anyway. But there was a lot of older people. It was a young person's website, college kids, right? But then it started, the college kids talked to their older brothers and sisters who talked to their older, slightly older friends. And pretty soon it started to spread the group of people that were on there, and the ages started to rise. But I remember hearing my mom saying, I don't want to get on that. That's a kid. It's for kids.
Right.
Now she's on TikTok.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she loves TikTok.
Oh, wow. That's
ridiculous.
Well,
but that's part of the evolution. I think, like you were saying, the necessity to be on Facebook became more and more compelling because that's where their families were. Right. That's where all of their relatives were talking about things happening. And so it became incumbent on
my
them.
parents, just during the pandemic, they stopped going to church because large gatherings, right? So they started watching their mass on Zoom. Then the church that they got more sophisticated, and they said, we're going to record this thing put it on YouTube. All right. So so now she watches mass every Sunday on YouTube.
Whenever she wants.
Yeah.
Right.
And
they probably record it beforehand.
Probably like on Monday night or something. But, and then now, my mom's on Facebook because it's a way for her to stay in touch with her classmates from high school. And, so it's become important to her, and so, yeah, I think that's, I'm trying to imagine what the Facebook of our, as we age, Dan, will be, right?
I don't know. I mean, there's new social networks popping up all over the place. And I think that young kids are catalyzing that because they don't want to be where the old people are. Right. So if you're on Facebook, I'm going to jump on this other thing. And if you're on that, I'm going to leave and go over there. And that's normal,
right? Yeah. I don't know why I just thought of this, but did you ever use Napster?
Yeah. Yeah.
I just thought about how
my kids turned me on to it.
Oh, really? Funny now. No, I just kept thinking back when I was using it, it always felt like, because you're basically downloading illegal music.
Yeah, you're stealing.
Right. And it just felt like that was the motivation to get on it, right? It was like, I'm going to get on here and download some free music.
Oh, you're a rebel, aren't
right. You? So
as a software developer, I have to say I did use it because music was expensive at that time.
Right.
And, It's free and easy, and you don't even have to leave your chair.
What were the?
But I felt really bad about it because I knew that everything that I did as a software developer, I wanted to be paid for.
Sure.
Right. So same difference.
So, but what was that technology called though? It was called
The what?
Peer-to-peer.
Yeah, peer-to-peer.
Peer-to-peer. Yeah.
That Napster did. They're still going on, dude. Have you ever heard of Plex?
No. Well, maybe.
Plex is kind of a platform for sharing movies.
Oh.
So people will rip movies off a Blu-ray or whatever and post them somewhere, and Plex will go out there and find them and sync them to everybody else that said they wanted it. So the way Plex works, my buddy has a Plex server with many, many, many terabytes of movies out there. So the idea is you would sign up for his server or whatever, make your own server and say, I want to see, I don't know, Lord of the Rings. I want to see this. And either he had them or it would put it in a queue and it would go out and find them all over the internet and download the most recent high quality version of it. It's still stealing.
Right. But it's the same
they'll get shut. Yeah, they'll get shut down.
Right.
Eventually. I mean, if either that or we'll decide as a society that, well, we can't really do copyright anymore. So we're going to have to find another way to compensate our artists and our creatives for the content that they create.
Yeah.
I don't know what it will be. I mean,
what's your I'm changing the subject a little bit, but it's kind of in the same entertainment, I guess, category. But you were kind of before the pandemic, you were kind of a live music person. You like to go to live music.
Sure.
A lot.
Okay.
So do you miss being able to go do that?
I'm really less of a live show person. I mean, the show itself, I like better recorded, mastered, all that stuff. What I like at going to events is the crowd and, certain people. Like I went and saw Daniel Rateliff at the Crossroads down here.
Yeah.
What a super group of people in the audience in that crowd. Everybody smiling, everybody happy, nobody drunk and acting the fool. And, they were engaged in the show, and it was the whole environment was lovely.
Right.
That's what I enjoy about going to shows.
Right. So that's what you miss about the pandemic, having not been able to do that.
I wouldn't say I miss it a whole lot. Honestly, Matt, I used to go to Rockfest every single year.
Oh, really?
Right.
Yeah.
And my first concert was Cal Jam 2. It was 3 days of, I can't even tell you. But
right.
I've done things like that throughout my life. The older I get, the less I care to do it, right? I stopped going to Rockfest about 5 years ago when it was Mudfest. The second time it was Mudfest at the World War I Memorial.
Right. Yeah, the only reason I bring that up is because I've been for the last 2 weeks now, every evening, I'll turn on the Royals game or a baseball game, and I sit there and I watch it, and I'm like, this isn't the same.
It's not the same with nobody in the crowds.
Right. So then what I find myself doing is going out and like YouTubing like last season, right?
Yep.
And watching the YouTube version where there were fans and then, and I mean, I'm a baseball fan. So fans, it adds another, like you're saying, another layer to the experience, but I just like the game itself, right? So I don't need the fans necessarily, but it is really off-putting a little bit to watch it without fans.
It is. I like the game too, probably not as well as you do. I mean, I do like it, and I watch it when I'm at the park, but when I'm at home, I like the fans too. I like when they cut away and show the kissing cam or any of those things. And without it there on TV, I find it extremely boring.
Yeah.
Extremely boring. So much so that I turned it off. In fact, the most exciting thing I saw the other day when I turned on a game for about 3 minutes was those big heads they had sitting behind the, like, look at that. It's cute. I'm done.
Yeah. So but they were talking the other day. So now, now there's this conversation about, college sports whether they should be played in the NFL, and the NBA's managed to play a season in the bubble in Orlando. And somebody had asked me the other day, they said, so would you actually go to like a large event like that, if like a Chiefs football game, if
Right.
they socially distance the entire
Or a
crowd?
wrestling tournament.
Right. And I don't know. I don't think I would go.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a good idea.
Yeah.
I know that we don't really know at this point. In fact, it's almost impossible to find the truth on anything. I know we don't really know, and there's plenty of people out there that think it's a hoax. There's plenty of people that think that they've either had it or they're protected or it's not as invasive as it seems, or all kinds of things, but that's because we can't find the truth. But not knowing the truth doesn't mean it's safe.
Mm-hmm.
It just means you don't know.
Right.
And so this big wrestling tournament that's going on at Hy-Vee Arena, it really worries me, and I'm concerned, and I will stay, I will stay up to date on whether or not it has an impact. And you can't really tell because, sure, they'll come together, hundreds, 1,000 people maybe, and have their wrestling tournament. And it may be that their COVID rates skyrocket compared to the population otherwise. But how would we know that that's what caused it or that's what raised it?
Right.
We won't, and there's no way to prove it. But I just think it's a bad idea at this time in the world. It seems to be a bad idea.
I mean, I love sports and all, but the proposition is safety over sport entertainment, right? And I think every time, depending on who you are, most people will pick safety.
Well, when I was in high school, I was a wrestler. I was a football player and a wrestler. I didn't really want to be a football player. I was kind of browbeat into it by my stepfather, who was a football player. I was not a good football player. In football, at the end of the season, in my freshman year, I think it was, I hurt my knee. I messed my kneecap up and shattered my meniscus. Didn't shatter him, smashed him, or did something to him. But my knee was swollen up 3 sizes, and they wanted to operate on it. And at that time, they wanted to remove my meniscus, which we all know now is not a good idea. But my mom tried to convince me to get that done, and I wanted to wrestle. And so I didn't. I fought through the pain, and I wrestled, and I got done. And here we are, 40 years later,
right.
And it's all fine. But in terms of safety versus, sports, I think these kids, if I was in high school, I don't know if you knew that I wrestled in high school, but I went to state when I was a junior. And I think I got up to 3rd place. Had to wrestle one of the Kistler brothers, which they're well-known wrestlers, and they've taught at Iowa State, which is
it's a big school.
Yeah, big wrestling school. So I lost to him, took 3rd place. I'm really proud of that. I hate to think that one of these kids out there wrestling at Hy-Vee Arena was in a position like that to the glory days, to live their glory days, but not be able to because of COVID and because of safety. But at the same time, I think it's a bad idea.
As you know, so today is the day that my daughter goes off to college, and it's kind of the same conversation, right? It's like, Maddie's as I always say, Maddie's a nerd, but there are glory days for nerds,
Sure.
right? And the glory days are maybe in college and being kind of intellectually challenged, and it's just such a mixed feeling right now for her. It's because basically she's going to end up going out to Kansas University. She's going to be out there, and potentially it's going to be sit in your dorm room, go to class online, if not go to a socially distanced classroom, which is going to be a weird experience in itself. Fear of people in her dorm getting exposed, having to lock down her entire dorm.
Fear of even meeting people. I mean, that's one of the big things you want to do in college. And now it's got to be, you got to be a little apprehensive.
And so just this week, University of North Carolina had, again, a bunch of students came and had a big party, and there were like 172 kids got infected. Then University of Notre Dame basically had originally wanted to bring kids on campus, but then reversed course. University of Michigan, same thing.
Yeah.
And so as parents, we're just thinking, my prediction is that she's going to be home in 30 days because there are the management of that disease on a campus, I don't care if it's in the middle of Kansas or in the middle of New York City, there's too many challenges to overcome, that they can't contain it, and that they will. And again, going back to one of the things that we focus on here is reduce risk.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way they're going to be able to reduce the risk of those kids. And so what's going to happen is they're going to have to tell all these kids to go back. And I just think they should have waited until next semester.
I agree. I don't know, next semester or, I think it needs to change. Yeah. It makes sense to me. I mean, you went to college, I went to college. What is it, right? You walk to class, you sit and you get lectured to. You have an opportunity sometimes to raise your hand and ask a question. After class, you can walk up and ask questions. And then the professor has office hours where you can go up and ask questions. Why couldn't we do all that online? Why couldn't we do that in a multi-person room, right? So that you can ask a question, you raise your hand. In Zoom, you got that raise your hand feature. So you could raise your hand, you could ask questions there. After, people started dropping off, you could still ask questions similar to if you were in the classroom. And then as a professor, my office hours are from this time to this time. You get on a Zoom call and you open up a room and people just join that room and say, hey, professor.
Well, that's interesting because there are some people during the pandemic who have said, in terms of articles that I've read about different universities, that the technology still is not good enough for online learning. That
it's not maybe good enough for everybody.
Right.
I think it's definitely possible, but if every student doesn't have the bandwidth. But what if you send them to school where they can sit in their dorm room and have bandwidth and never leave?
Right. Well, and so the article that I read posed that what would happen because of the pandemic, that large universities basically would realize their limitations with technology and learning, and they would then reach out and partner with large tech companies like Google and say, we want to transform our online learning experience into something more rich and more engaging than a Zoom call, right? Where my audio is cutting in and out. A friend of our family, her daughter just graduated with a teaching degree, and she teaches art. And she goes, try teaching art, Matt, on a Zoom call. She's like, paint this thing this way. It's not impossible, but it's very hard.
It's really, really hard when you haven't done it yet.
Right.
It's damn near impossible, but you know what? Anything that hasn't been done yet is impossible.
Right.
And I'm using that words with air quotes.
Right.
Because I honestly don't believe there is anything that's impossible. We have to put our mind to it. I don't know why at this point there is such a push to get people back in schools when it seems like there's alternatives. Right. Not only, so if you're a college and you have to hire professors, you have to give them offices. You are in a way constrained to how many professors you can have.
Right.
Also, how many people can I convince to move to this location that can live, with the salary that I want to pay them in the, kind of home that they're used to living in. All of those things are complications that maybe aren't necessary. So what I'm getting at is my business, when we went into lockdown, it changed overnight. And here's how it changed. Now my clients don't expect me to be face-to-face with them. They don't expect my project manager to be face-to-face with them. I don't expect my project manager to be face-to-face with me.
Right.
And so why do I have to have them here in Kansas City or, in the near surrounding area if we never have to meet face-to-face? The cost of that is that we can't communicate in the ways that we used to as easily. We have to learn new ways of judging people's behavior, or not their behavior, but their, how they feel about things and, their response to our words. Now you just have their face and maybe a glitchy connection where you can't really see that they just smirked at what you said, but these things, if we want to, we can overcome them. I've already started to notice my ability to recognize people's facial expressions has been increasing from an initial degradation when everybody put masks on. You can't see if they're smiling. You can't see if, they use the F word at you. I mean, but you can. You just have to look at different areas of their face and see the different micro expressions.
Yeah, the article that I read said that if universities get it right and they partner with big tech or technology company and they make the experience really good in terms of learning, that to your point, what they realized was now we're not limited to a class size. We're not limited to an auditorium.
You're not limited to a certain set of teachers either.
Right. And so now what you can imagine is, I have you ever gone to like Coursera or some of those online learning? I was able to attend a University of Michigan class on leadership.
Yep.
Normally that class would have cost me probably $1,000 or more. But University of Michigan said, we're just going to put it up on this website just to see how many people we can get to attend. They had over 300,000 people sign up for that course.
Wow.
Right.
That's awesome.
Right. So now you've got to be thinking, if you're them, you're like, okay, we put it up for free. Now imagine if we just charge $50 per person.
That changes their whole business model.
Absolutely.
Why do we even need a campus?
Right. Absolutely.
Right? Because the people that come to campus, maybe 100,000, I don't know how many people are on Stanford or MIT or Harvard. But I have to imagine that it's relatively few compared to the people that would attend classes online if it was inexpensive.
Right. But you could even do this, Dan, where you could say, sign up for this course at University of Michigan, watch all the, engage in all the online courses. And then let's say you do need the sort of feeling of a group thing, right? Well, just filter for all the people taking the course in your area, schedule some time to get together, and now you're University of Michigan at Kansas City, Missouri, right?
That's what I'm talking about. I think the technology is there. I think we have the ability to make education better, much better, and more available to the masses.
Yeah.
Right. And I know Stanford has had their classes out there for a long time. And I think it's Stanford, but I know that there's a number of schools out there that are giving their lectures away for free.
Right.
You just don't get a degree.
Right.
Right. So you can still learn. And if your goal is just to educate yourself, you can take college classes from Harvard if you want to.
Right.
You just can't put it on your transcript.
Right. Took Zoom Harvard class on your resume, right?
But you know what? I see a lot of people on LinkedIn that claim to have gone to Harvard. And I thought, wow, there's like 5 today that I've seen went to Harvard. That's incredible. Come to find out, Harvard does these short little certificate class, and people will go there for a 4-hour lecture or whatever, and claim they went to Harvard, which in a sense they did.
But the other benefit too, though, becomes you solve the student loan crisis. Right? Because now if your online learning experience is pretty rich and the cost for you as a student.
Yep. Cost is going to come down.
Right.
It has to, because now supply is limitless
Right.
and demand is much greater. Now you're not limited to the 100 people you can fit in a classroom. You have to charge $1,000 each. Right. Now you can sell it for $10, sell it to 500,000, and you've quadrupled your money.
Right. Right. And because the cost has come down, now you can go through an entire degree program walking away with a fraction of what the in-person experience cost you, right? You know?
Absolutely. But you know what? I mean, this is just change. If 300,000 people this year graduated from Harvard, let's say 3 million people graduated from Harvard. I want to make it an extreme number because it could be. Right. 3 million people graduated from Harvard this year, 4 million next, 12 million next. Pretty soon, the Harvard degree is not nearly as valuable because it's not as much prestige.
Right. The dilution of a brand. Right.
But I tell you what, it seems like the average intelligence of our community would be much higher.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know that the University of Harvard with 3 million people graduating, as long as the right amount of dollars were in the bank, how much are they going to really be concerned about?
Yeah, Harvard wouldn't care.
Right.
No, then they'll become a Netflix, in a sense, right? Just delivering data, just delivering content, right? And they've kind of started on the other end of that. If you look at Netflix used to send you DVDs through the mail, CDs. I don't know if it started with CDs or not, but either way, old technology, and then they transmuted. They transformed themselves into online delivery of these movies that were still not their content. And then they started making their own content. So Netflix originals, right? And a lot of the other platforms are doing it as well. Amazon and Hulu. And Harvard started with the content. We create our own content and we deliver it by hand. Right. But now they have the content. All they have to do is set up the delivery platform and.
Right. And that's the point about partnering with tech is that's how you get the delivery vehicle is you don't build it yourself. You go out, partner with somebody and say.
What if you just partner with Netflix?
Or yeah, absolutely. Anybody that understands content delivery, right?
Disney. Disney has, a platform now. Well, you know that. I don't know how much content is on there besides Disney, because I would hope that they're curating only Disney-like content on Disney.
Sure.
Because of the Disney brand. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, but I mean, the future may be, University of Harvard presented by Google, right? Or presented by Netflix or, whatever.
Right. Powered by Netflix.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So.
Yeah, who knows what the future holds. But you know what is exciting? You started this conversation with the detriment to Maddie in going to college during this day and age where you don't get the traditional college experience. There's no way that you can get it. Even if you go and you're on campus, it's a very different, much degraded experience because the things that you expect to get out of campus are now impossible. You can't have close relationships. You can't have dorm parties. You can't have frat parties. You can't do all of those things. But there's a huge value in it. I mean, this change could make college or the education system so much better than it is today. And what are we going to give up for that? Well, it doesn't seem that bad to me to give up, big frat parties or drinking on campus or all the things that have become part of the college experience that really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I do see one element.
Now, I don't want to come off as a prude by saying it really shouldn't be. But in my opinion, educate yourself and then party all you want. I don't care, or don't, because if you're educated, you probably aren't going to party as much.
Well, and what I would point to is the value of collectively kind of critically thinking in college. So
where did you do that?
I did that in my dorms.
With a number of your study group.
Yeah.
Right. Study groups. Absolutely. But there's nothing stopping that.
Well, right. But what I'm saying is that not my study groups. I was thinking about this. I was talking actually with all my college roommates the other night on text, and it was a Friday night. I mean, maybe we were not typical guys, but it was a Friday night. There was always some beer involved, but it was discussions of current events or a topic that was brought up in a class that we were going to talk about. So the ability to get together in person and to have a debate about topics,
or just a really good conversation.
Yeah. I think that's the part that I kind of I liked, and I in retrospect I thought was very valuable for me because it helped shape my opinions and my ability to communicate my ideas and listening to different perspectives and all those things that I'm not saying that's not achievable online.
Right. But you're not going to fall into it, kind of like you did.
Right.
Like I'm just sitting in my dorm room. All of a sudden, there's a great conversation.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, we we were having a text conversation last night about this whole idea of this would be if sports was going to come back in college, but was this whole idea of whether college athletes should be paid, because it's been kind of an ongoing debate for many, many years. And as all of my connections from college most of us were athletes. And we had this super long text conversation back and forth about the pros and the cons of it and how are you going to do this and how are they going to get paid and all this back and forth conversation. And at the end of it, they said, man, this is what I miss about college are these conversations. Right.
Yeah. You're playing a game. It's a philosophy game.
Right. And so I project that out for my daughter to go to college. And I do, if she could have that, I think that would be valuable for her.
I'm sure she will find it. I believe people seek out those kinds of conversations. Right. She gets it now with you and Jody.
Right. A lot of, as I just said, a lot of the people that I've met in college became lifelong friends. And so to kind of limit that in some way or to prevent that from happening in some way, I told her last night, I said, Maddie, I think you got to get through the first year, and just seeing how the pandemic, how you've got to adjust to the pandemic and how that applies to college. You just got to get through the first year here and see what it teaches you. And then, post pandemics, then maybe see what kind of an experience it's going to be. Right.
I know it's scary for her. I know it's got to be scary for other, freshmen entering college for the first time.
Right.
But I think the potential for having a better experience in college because of the limitations that we're under right now, I think the potential that it could be better is great.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I said that to her the other night. I said, I think
she tell you to cough?
Basically. She's like, whatever, Matt. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, maybe I'm the...
that's what we should be teaching in school is to look at both sides of the coin. Because I'll tell you what, I was pretty late in life before I realized everything has a good side and a bad side. Everything that sucks also has some powerful benefit.
Right.
Usually equal in magnitude. Right. The things that really suck, the change that you really don't want to happen provides an opportunity that is as, opportune, the impact of that opportunity is as big as the impact of the negative.
Yeah. I mean, one of the biggest criticisms of, I always get corrected by her whenever I define her generation. There's always criticisms of different generations for different reasons, right? and
they're all false.
Anyway,
who
knows? But for Maddie's generation, it's this idea of having to face sort of challenging situations, being resilient. Grit's a big word now, right? Mm-hmm. That her generation hasn't had to endure challenges that other generations have. And my message to her is, this is the challenge. This is the challenge of how do you make this work? You know?
Heroes don't become heroes unless there's some big, huge
Right.
challenge.
Right. And I think as a young person going into college in a pandemic and trying to look at it like a challenge, I realize that's a hard thing to kind of wrap your head around.
It's really hard for your dad to tell you to.
Absolutely. But if you can walk away from that and look back on that and say, I adjusted this way, I overcame the challenge in this way, if you can look at it like that, then I think Maddie will be faster on her way to adulthood after the first year of college than I probably was.
I think she's probably well on her way to adulthood anyway, but I think it's, I do the same thing. I look at, where I was when I was 16 compared to where my kids were when they were 16.
Right.
And at that time I thought, shit, man, I was much more mature than you at that age. I also was out on my own a lot and unsupervised. And, my mom thought I was at home doing dishes or whatnot. No, I was not.
Right.
So I grew up a little faster than my kids, but I'll tell you what, when we got to the 20s, they were in their 20s. And now I've got, one of them almost 30, it'll be 30 in October, and one of them that's 36. They have excelled much faster than I did. I would say they're, in terms of knowledge and education and being well-rounded in society, they've surpassed me already. And I think it's because they have access to the internet and social networks, and
right.
They're inundated with all of this stuff that forces them to absorb it and learn from it. And that is growing up.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point, is that's one thing I've noticed because oftentimes enough, when I talk to Maddie, I ask questions about, like, how are you learning? Right. And what I mean by that is, I don't mean like, what are you learning? I'm saying, like, how are you learning that thing? Right. And that's the thing that I see as different, is her pace of learning is much faster than mine was, because she's consuming more in a different way.
Yeah, she's conditioned to absorb it faster, to filter it faster,
right.
to categorize it, organize it, everything in her brain. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So you got her technology when she was young?
She got that was a kind of a debate, but Maddie, we gave her a phone when she was in middle school.
Yeah. What about computer?
She's always had a computer.
Always.
Yeah.
Right. So my kids too. Always. Yeah. When they were 2 and 3 years old, I would let them start playing on the old computer, right? Just because I didn't want them to grow up in this digital age, what I thought would be a digital age. Started having kids when I was in 83. So that wasn't quite digital, but I grew up with a computer myself. My parents had computers in the house, and I thought it was important for my kids to have computers to play with. And for the first few years, I didn't give them internet access, at least the first one. After a while, it became obvious that without it, the computer was really a boring toy.
It's paperweight.
It was a really ugly and poor excuse for a PlayStation or Xbox.
Right.
But with the internet, then it became a learning toy, and they were in charge of their education. If they wanted to learn, this, that, the other thing, they would go do it. I tried to watch them, to prevent them from getting into things that I didn't think were moral or ethical, but I don't really know how to draw that line. Right. It was mainly porn. Don't go out to porn sites.
Right.
But it wasn't because I didn't want them to see pornography. It was because I knew that porn sites had viruses, and, there were shady people running those things. And if you clicked on an ad, if you accidentally clicked a video that was an ad or anything like that, that they would be infected. And then guess who had to clean up their machine?
Right.
I mean, it wasn't just the having to clean up their machine, but it's impossible. They have to learn those things in life, and they can't do it without making mistakes and without failing to be perfect over and over and over.
Right. And there's an argument there that says, but, like I was listening to somebody that said, with all this work from home stuff, I've got my kid who's sitting at home and, all they're doing is they're on YouTube all day long, just looking at videos. And she's like, and then they're clicking on a video that seems like the one they just watched. And now all of a sudden they're on like some, watching some video that is extreme, whatever. Right. And that's like 3 clicks away.
Sure.
Right. And the argument goes that companies like YouTube and other companies that have content, that they've got to help parents out a little bit. Give us some support in the form of guardrails or of some.
Well, yeah, you could say it's Google or YouTube's responsibility, Google's responsibility to do that. But here's the other side of that coin. I watch a lot of YouTube too. And guess what? I know that if I just let it autoplay, it's taken me off on a little journey. So I don't. I turn off autoplay and I go and watch what I want to watch.
Right.
And I have, content that I've curated that I think is valuable and benefits me in my life. And so I make sure that I don't get, I think of the autoplay and the things that come down the road in autoplay as commercials, right there. It's shoving something into your attention span that you didn't ask for, nor possibly didn't want. So turn it off. That's my fix to it.
Right.
I did the same thing with Spotify, right? I don't listen to a whole lot of music because I'd rather listen to podcasts or something educational, my own personal preference. But I do like listening to music once in a while. And I found that if I go in there and I find that song, like recently, my girlfriend hums this song and I found out what it is. It's Memories by Maroon 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to hear that again in the background while I'm working. So I'll put it on, and if I don't click on the replay and then click again so it just replays the one song, then it goes off on this.
Sure.
Takes me on a journey that I wasn't
planning on going.
I wasn't planning on going, nor it's distracting, so nor can I stay focused on my stuff because now I don't. What is that?
Right.
And I have to go turn it off. But I think this is what the kids are going to learn, right? It's not YouTube's responsibility to coddle anybody. They're a business. They make their money off of advertisements, right? It's your job to educate your children about that and show them how to turn the autoplay off.
For our generation, my generation, it was the criticism was of latchkey kids, right? Where both parents were working, kids would come home, and what they do, they'd sit in front of the TV for the rest of the day. And so TV
until 15 minutes before the parents got home,
right?
or 10 or 5.
Right. So TVs were responsible for rotting the brains of kids when I was growing up. Then it became, the Atari that they bought.
Yeah.
Right. Then it was Atari's fault because
Space
you're rotting.
Invaders.
Right. You're rotting the kid's brain with the Atari you bought them. So every generation seems to have this thing that as parents, you can choose your level of involvement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Atari didn't come with a parental warning that said, if your kid spends more than 8 hours in front of our machine, please contact child services.
And why should it?
Right. And I always think of it in terms of more and more like elementary school kids and maybe up to middle school, maybe that, younger kids like that, if they're involved with technology, there should be an expectation of both a combination of the parent being responsible for their exposure, but we shouldn't be. I think the technology also has a responsibility in some ways.
Like what? What in this particular scenario, what would be YouTube's responsibility?
The fact that YouTube has a child's version of YouTube is an indication to me that they saw a purpose for that.
And met it.
Right.
Right.
Right. So that tells me that they realized that they had kids going to places on their regular YouTube channels that were impacting, that they were having some sort of negative impact. So what they did was they said, we created a whole separate YouTube for kids. So now we know that if parents can just keep your kid on the YouTube Kids channel, then we are responsible for guaranteeing that that is kids content.
That's impossible.
I don't know. Is it?
Well, it is, because it's subjective what kids content is. I don't know how they can do it. I honestly don't think that it's possible. It's an intractable problem, because one person's porn is another person's child. I mean, that's probably an extremity, right? But there's cartoons that seem very benign and educational, even, that people have a problem with, right? Because of the way that, the characters are colored, or because of the way that the characters treat each other, or because they're not represented LGBTQ, right? Or any of those reasons. So it's up to the parent, right? I think YouTube, I don't know what the kids channel is. I never even heard of it, to tell you the truth. But it seems like if YouTube was going to do anything to give parents any kind of control, that they would create parental features like a lot of other
I think they do.
Technologies do.
Yeah.
But that should be the extent of it. If you as a parent can't keep your kids from watching something, why is it YouTube's responsibility? And the same goes with school, right? I think everything, we send our kids to school and we expect the school to socialize them. And, when they come home from school and they're stockpiling guns and going to go back to the school and shoot everybody, whose fault is that?
Right.
It's the parents' fault. It's not the school who socialized them. It's the parents who didn't socialize them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the idea of shifting. We shouldn't be shifting responsibilities.
Right. And we do.
Right.
Though I think our current society is that we do.
Right. If there are mechanisms or methods that technology can implement to make it a slightly easier job for a parent to shelter their kids from something, that's not a bad idea.
For a fee.
Sure.
For a fee. Right. And so that now it goes back into the business model, right? YouTube has to make money or they cannot stay in business. They cannot provide the service that they provide to all of us. If we need to implement $1 million parental control system, well, somebody's got to pay for that. Right. It should be the parents that need it, right? So yeah, sure. $15 a month. Well, we can make twice as much if we charge 30. Let's do that.
Right.
Right. And now business is happy, bottom line is happy, parents are happy, kids are probably not happy. But
right. What kind of content is this?
Cartoons? No, probably not even cartoons. And cartoons are.
Well, I mean, I haven't been on it either, but I mean, yeah. So
why haven't you been on there?
Well, my daughter's high school, so I don't really have a reason to be. No, but I would. Now that we've been talking about it, it would be interesting just to get on there, just to understand how the content is different and what parental controls and how much it costs. To your point, right?
It's probably a paid version that has parental features, which
sure.
YouTube's been trying to push paid versions for a long time. They've got a number of different paid versions that overlap each other a little bit. So it may just be them capitalizing. They created a whole nother area just for kids, or what looks like a whole nother area just to be able to monetize it differently. And it might be just that. They created a kid so the certain ads would only run.
That's right.
Or maybe no ads.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't seen a YouTube without ads yet, but.
I haven't either.
Do some research. Let's talk about it next week.
There you go.
Well, you want to take a little break?
Yeah, sure.
All right, let's do that. And we're back.
Gotta love technology.
Yeah.
Anyway, I guess what I was getting at was that during the sales process that we're going through right now with a lot of different opportunities, everybody wants to know, why are you in business? What can you do for me? what makes you unique, and we know what all those things are.
Right.
But there's another layer of investigation or questions that a lot of people are asking, which is, what is your social stance almost, right? Like,
Mhm.
what are the organizations that you are affiliated with socially, right?
Right.
Like I said, the one woman I talked to yesterday, she had on her site a list of organizations she donates to, like whether it be American Diabetes Association or the Cancer Institute, or, you know. And so what we're seeing is there are certain organizations that only want to partner with like-minded individuals, right? People
I
that
agree.
care about the same things that they care about, right?
That is becoming more prevalent
Absolutely.
all the time.
And so but it's interesting to me that I mean, I can even recall a conversation we had last year with a company. I can't think of the name of them. It was about that real estate app that we were talking to him about.
Real estate matchmaker.
Yeah. And that guy asked us about what philanthropy we do or something.
Right.
On one level, I understand it, but on another level, it's like the questions that you're asking me and the way that you partner with me have more to do with my ability to deliver what you need, right? And that's maybe a short-term partnership look. A longer-term partnership might, in fact, be, if I'm going to partner with you for years on end, I really want to dig into who you are and what you stand for.
I don't disagree with that. I don't know how much you can do up front. I could put on our website all of the places where we donate money. I could put on there what churches we go to, right? All of these things are indicators of our company and who we are as people. But I think that when you use that kind of stuff to market your business, it demeans the value of it.
Mm.
I think when you pray so that people can see you pray, you're demeaning the value of it. That's just I think, you know, if you get to know me and you hang out with me, you'll know what church I go to. You'll know how often I pray, how often I meditate, how often I give, right? But for me to come out and offer that up off the bat is me kind of showing off or thinking I'm going to use that to my advantage. And it completely takes away from, you know, the point of it, I guess, which is to give back, not to pay goodwill and not goodwill, but not to pay somebody so that you get a benefit of it. Right. That's, and I honestly, I know there's companies out there doing it, and I know that it's actually working for some of them, but I think it's too early to tell whether it will continue to work for them. The world is changing, and how we contact people, you know, kind of going back to that whole discussion we had in the beginning about automation and reaching out to all these people. It used to be the case that there were ways of reaching out to your clients via email or on the phone that were acceptable that aren't acceptable anymore because either the world has changed or because too many people found out about, you know, that a particular email subject line was working, and so now everybody uses it. And to wit, the RE:anything as a first email to somebody is an example. If I get an RE email from somebody I don't know, I immediately block them.
Right.
And I kind of feel bad because they might be bringing value, but I also know that they're way behind the times, and
it's crummy technique.
Yeah.
Right. The one thing I realized, you know, we always like to, you know, we did this with chat metrics in terms of we liked the way that whole transaction took place. And I was thinking of this when I was interacting with this guy from LeadJet, and I was thinking, well, I guess by comparison, me and you both went about that differently. I told you about it. You simply went, downloaded it, and said, "I'm gonna try it out."
Sure, it was on my to-do list, and I got it done in 5 minutes.
Right, but I said I want a demo. I want to see a guy on a computer, show me how it works, right? But that buying experience I needed to see a person and talk to a guy to explain it to me so I could ask questions, right? Yeah. Other people that aren't me are fine with, just download it, start using it, right?
That's me.
Right. But you just knew it was a piece of software and didn't really need to talk to anybody about it, didn't really need to understand the pros and cons of it.
Yeah.
And so I translate that to people that buy our service. And I say, as a side note, they have this consulting woman I spoke to the other day. She has on her website, it says book now. And what it means is actually begin an engagement with me now. She has 4 columns of different prices for different engagements. And you literally just book the appointment and book the engagement right on her website. So then I think about it from our perspective. It's like, would we ever move somebody through our sales process without ever really engaging them in that way?
No.
Right.
No.
Right.
Because I don't know that I want to work with everybody.
Right.
I'd like to be successful. And it takes both parties in a project, a technical project. Both parties have to be aligned in order for that project to be successful. And I personally don't want to do projects that I don't think are highly likely to be successful.
Right. Dan, I sent you this link to this terabyte of data. I just need you to migrate it over here, and then we're done. Right. You see what I'm saying? It's like, it depends on what the transaction is. Right. And none of our transactions are just like that.
No, they wouldn't be.
Right. So
I would say, yeah, good luck with that.
Right.
I mean, I don't mind migrating somebody's data, but it's not what we do. It takes us quite a bit of effort to get to know our clients, to understand the topography of their business, what satisfies them, what the expectations are, all of that stuff. And all of that costs money to spend that time with somebody, and to move data over, it doesn't fit into that paradigm at all. I mean, just to migrate data, just any data, doesn't matter what it is, just move it from here to there. First of all, anybody could do that. Second of all, it's not in our list of products to sell that service.
Right.
We are a customer service company, which means we engage with you personally.
Right.
And we happen to do technology.
Right.
All kinds of technology.
Right. So if that same person came to us and said, same deal, I need some data migrated, but is willing to spend the time to talk to us, get to know us, listen to our advice or recommendations,
right?
Then that's we'd still do the project.
No, we still wouldn't do the project, but right. I mean, because it's too simplistic for us.
Right.
Our real value comes in creating complex systems that are architecturally simple, right? We've created them in a way that makes them robust and dependable. And that's what I enjoy doing, specifically for the healthcare industry.
Right.
I mean, because we've done this for plenty of different clients in different industries. And we've been successful a number of times, but I've never had the feeling of success like I have when I'm helping a children's hospital fix healthcare for kids.
Right.
I mean, that's not only did you have a successful project, but you can walk away from that knowing that you did something good for the world.
Sure.
And so that's where I want us to focus.
Right. So that's not a migration project.
It's not, unless it's healthcare migration with somebody that, needs help, because right. If I can get that extra benefit, sure, I'll move your data for you. In fact, I might do it for free just because it's right. a simple thing to do.
Right.
As long as I can walk away feeling like I did something to help the world.
Sure.
To help children, to help healthcare.
Right.
Which I think we've got a lot of problems with healthcare.
Right.
Not the least of which is that people that go to the hospital get sick from things in the hospital. They get wrong dosages of medication. They get wrong medications, right? And it's not because anybody is intending to do it wrong. It's not because anybody in the hospital is negligent. I mean, intentionally negligent or just not caring.
Right.
It's because it's hard as hell. And that's the kind of thing I think that are primed for technical innovation.
Right. Yeah, I think that one of my conversations with this lady yesterday, I had said to her that, you know, probably in the last 10 years, hospitals have done a better job of adapting to technology. But they're
Better than the 10 years prior to that. Yeah.
right, right. But there is still huge amounts of inefficiency, duplication of effort, errors within the healthcare space itself.
Mm-hmm.
And as I told her, I said, the pandemic has hit the fast forward button on some of those areas and then made them address them sooner than later. But it also just has highlighted ways in which innovation could help, right? I think of, you know, the way that hospitals report, just reporting during the pandemic, right? Reporting cases and sharing of data. I look at some of the stuff that they're doing now, and I think it's great. Just the ease at which they're able to report out about the disease and the people they're seeing in the hospital and sharing that information. But I still think there's still some pockets of areas within research and within hospital systems themselves that I look at and I see an opportunity for technology to improve that in some way, right? So,
yeah, I do too. There's plenty of horizon left in healthcare with respect to technology, not the least of which is using machine learning and artificial intelligence to assist physicians and nurses and
right.
anybody else that is providing healthcare.
Yeah, I saw I know one area that we've had some interest in has been, and some of the work that we've already done is around that whole patient remote monitoring stuff, right? And I think that's also an area where, I mean, I think I told you the story. My dad had knee replacement surgery done a month or so ago. And my dad had his knee replacement surgery on like a Wednesday, and by Friday he was home.
Yep.
And that is, to some people, that's still impressive, right?
Was he able to walk?
They had him walking after he came out of surgery.
Right.
Right.
Same with my mom.
Right.
Had a new knee put in, or what kind of surgery?
Yeah, he had knee replacement surgery. Yeah.
Yeah, you said that.
Yeah. But there's just more and more opportunities, and a lot of it has to do with cost reduction, risk reduction, whatever. But more and more of it is, hey, we're going to put this remote device on you to send you on your way, but we're going to continue to monitor your vitals or
right,
whatever. And I just, there are more companies out there creating those devices, building that technology that goes with those devices that, I'm imagining, by the time you walk out of a hospital, you're strapped with 5 devices on you to measure all these different things. But I was trying to, Philips, the big Philips brand, they're in healthcare too. And I can't remember exactly what device that they make that's around, that they were putting on people's arms as they left the hospital to measure what it was measuring, but it was something to do with a surgery that they had done or something that they wanted to measure something. But yeah, I think that, I think there are all kinds of built-in advantages for people building, those sorts of things, those remote monitoring systems. And I know our experience specifically is in the whole measuring, monitoring diabetes. But there are, we talked to a guy about the pacemaker and monitoring that. And so there's just all kinds of different areas that I think are ripe for innovation and when it comes to that stuff.
I agree, especially wearables.
Yeah. Right.
The technology is there. We've got the ability to do all kinds of readings. There's so many opportunities that it's.
Well, and they said that even like we were talking about earlier, in terms of, how adaptable older people are to new technology. But the interesting thing is that the jump is not as hard as what some people think, because the article that I read was talking about how more familiar older people are with devices, right? Because now you've got a blood pressure machine that you've been using at home, right? You've got an app that's measuring your steps, right? If you're older, maybe you're using that. So you're using your, Amazon Echo at home, right? So now if I strap a device to you as an older person, you're like, oh, no big deal. Yeah.
I would guess a lot of older people. What about your parents? Do they use Echoes? They have Alexa in their house?
They don't. Do
they have a flat screen TV?
They got the giant box now. No, yeah, they got a flat screen TV. And they got a computer, and yeah. It's still, I think for them, it's still a little privacy security issue for using that kind of stuff. But if my dad went in and had surgery, or my mom, and they said, look, we're going to strap this to you, and here's why, and here's the benefit of it. It's temporary. You got to wear it for a week. We're going to learn some stuff. We're going to monitor if something goes wrong. Mm-hmm. They would do it because they, it's their health.
I would do it. In fact, I'm thinking about getting a Whoop device, or not a band.
Oh,
right. Just to measure sleep and exercise and, intensity of workout and that kind of thing. And I'll wear it to bed. That's one thing that is something I'm working on, is I want to get better sleep. Mm-hmm. And in order to get better sleep, you have to work at it. I mean, I guess some people don't. But limiting blue light, making sure that it's time for bed. I usually go to bed at a specific time. I'm not always tired, and so I waste part of my 7 hours of sleep time trying to sleep. Right. So having this data to look at and see where I'm at and what I'm doing. If I'm in one of those nights where I'm not ready for bed, maybe a good run would be a better option to spend 15, 20 minutes running a couple miles than laying there for an hour awake when I should be sleeping.
Right. Yeah, I think that
I'd even get it embedded.
See, now that's a little
not yet, but but I would. When I knew there was a device that would give me all of the data that I needed, and I could be fairly self-assured that, or not self-assured, but fairly assured by the company that my data was my data. Sure, I'd do it.
Right.
Hey, I would even donate my data to a hospital if it was going to go into a massive data set that would help the world.
That does bring up another good point that we were talking earlier about the whole, what data we would share and facial recognition. And they had said that, what was the news story? They bought Ancestry.com. It was I have to research it. Anyways, some company bought Ancestry.com, and they immediately came out with a press release that said, we're not going to share anybody's data. But the reason why I think Ancestry got in trouble was because a police department went to Ancestry and said, we think we have some DNA. We want to see if we can match it to somebody in your organization. Right. They found like a close match, and then they pursued that as a lead, right. and then that just crossed all kinds of barriers, I guess. And so,
I think, and I've heard something recently that if if you believe that something is true and you go to set out to find out whether it's true or not, the likelihood of you finding that it's false is pretty small, because your intention is to find out that it's true.
Right.
So by Ancestry saying, oh, this is a 99.9% match, you don't look at the 0.1% as significant, right? But in our justice system, it's absolutely significant. If it's not 100%, it's not beyond reasonable doubt.
So is your reasoning for sharing your data about, if we're talking about like sharing, like, I don't know what.
I'm talking about, whatever data a wearable can collect about my health. I think that it could be aggregated and give us better information about our society's health and things that we might not be able to see otherwise. So let's say that I contribute my data. I'm here in Kansas City and it's collected by a repository nationwide, but by location. And we realize, whoa, these northeastern states all have 25% higher cases of whatever.
Right.
That's knowledge that we didn't have or couldn't have without that aggregation and without me donating my data. Much like I donate my
organs.
I'm an organ donor.
Right. Right.
Prospect, I guess. I've clicked it. I certainly haven't donated any.
Not yet, right. But interesting correlation back to COVID. What they started doing was they started doing testing in the water treatment facilities in every city and saying, can we detect the spread of the disease in wastewater? Basically. A lot of
Did they find anything?
A lot of universities were doing that. They were building the test and going to the water. I don't know whether it validated their hypothesis of tracking spread or not. But
it's an interesting approach, that's for sure.
Right.
I wouldn't want to go and collect it.
Well,
man, wastewater plants, they stink.
Right. Yeah. Huh. So, but you're saying you're donating out of the goodness of your heart. You want to improve the larger population.
And plus, I just don't know that there's much risk in somebody knowing my blood pressure on a day-to-day basis, or a trend line, or any of the things that might be collected. It's minutia.
But what if that minutia became marketable, right? They sold your data. We
better agree that it's mine, right? Right. It's mine until I give it to them.
Right.
But it's not meant, I would never give it away so that another company could make money off of it.
Dan,
I might sell it.
Right. Dan, we noticed your blood pressure on Wednesday was rather high. Try our new product, free to you for the next 30 days, right?
Well, if part of this data was, for instance, like stool sample, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we could collect that without actually collecting it, right? Not physically collecting it, but because you're having a wearable and you have eaten and your body is functioning correctly, we now know what is in your stool. And if we transferred that data to a repository and a company like Viome got a hold of it,
right,
and then told me, you know what, we know what you shouldn't be eating and you eat it apparently pretty frequently, that's a huge benefit to me. I still would want to have opted in to them doing that,
right,
that research.
Right. So did you ever do that?
I did.
And it told you what?
I didn't know what I was going to get back as a result. And basically what I got back was a list of foods that I should definitely eat, a list of foods that were okay, and a list of foods that I should stay away from.
Do you find that to be accurate?
I don't know. They told me to stay away from bell peppers, and I disliked bell peppers up until 2 or 3 years ago, and all of a sudden I couldn't get enough of them. And now they want me to stay away from them. It's like, I don't know. I thought I was being more healthy by eating more vegetables.
Right.
All right. And plus a lot of the foods, so I'm not trying to knock Viome.
Right.
I have a very small vocabulary when it comes to foods. Like, I know it's not vocabulary, but whatever it is, I eat just very few different types of foods. There's very few vegetables I eat. There's very few types of meat I eat. Very few types. Well, I like a lot of cheeses, but I mean, for the most part, of the food that are available, I consume just a small subset of them. And most of the things that were on the list of the things that I should eat are things that, I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to cook. I don't know that I even like them. I don't know where to find them.
Right.
All of that. And so I didn't find a whole lot of value in it.
Yeah.
But if they'd have given me all those numbers, then now I could start researching it and finding out why should I stay away from bell peppers? Oh, I see why you said that. I can accomplish that this way or that way, right? For me, I'm a data kind of guy, right? I want the details. And Viome just told me, here's a new diet for you. I didn't intend on signing up for them to tell me what I should and shouldn't eat.
Right.
And I'm sure if I'd have dug in a little more to the details, I should have known. So I'm not knocking them.
Right.
But I think what they are doing is extremely valuable. What they're trying to do is map your gut and tell you what it's doing in there, because we all have a different set of organisms in there.
So but you didn't ever do like a 23andMe DNA thing or?
No. I thought about it. I don't know what value I'd get out of it. You know, I can tell you.
They send you back what, like family history of potential diseases and all that, right?
I had an ex-girlfriend that did that for her father, who was an orphan. He had never found his parents, and he'd looked throughout his life really, really hard. And so he did the 23andMe, and apparently the biggest value that they got out of it was that they knew his ancestry was somewhere in, the, what do you call that area of the world? Russia, Germany. I mean, that Eastern Bloc. I don't know.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't know where exactly it was. Might have been Slovenia or Ukraine or somewhere like that. So he found out in general that's where he's from.
Oh.
I never did it. I know where I'm from. I've got enough history of my father's side of the family that I know we came from Slovenia in 1890. His name was Frank Krimp.
The original intent of those businesses were just that. We're just going to tell you like where you're from and where your family's from and all that. But then they kind of morphed into more of a science company, right? Where they're sending you send in what, saliva or blood, or I can't remember what all you have to send in.
23andMe?
Yeah.
No, I don't know anything about it.
Because now Ancestry does that now too, right? Where they do the same thing that 23andMe does, right? So it's kind of an interesting, speaking of companies that morph into something else that they started out as, and they've morphed into more, I mean, they were always a data company, right?
Every company's a data company.
Right. They were always collecting data about your family history and all that. They just moved to a different type of data company.
So this is a new kind of business model. I'm sure they're selling the DNA tests, right? But the information, if you got a million people that are paying you for these DNA tests and you give them the results, but now you still have their DNA. If you can utilize that to make money, say selling 1 million samples of DNA to somebody that's going to run wants to add it to their data set, that's kind of frustrating, right? Back to the whole privacy thing.
Right.
We need a way to control our data. And I don't know that there can ever be physical controls where we can watch the bits and make sure they don't leave the place we put them. But I think we're going to have heavy penalties for those that are found to be in violation of these agreements. I sure hope we get there.
Well, I think that going back to our discussion about Napster, hopefully they make it easier than enforcing copyright infringement, right?
That's hard.
Because they never seem to pursue that until somebody was taking a large infringing largely on a lot of people.
Well, there's bigger fish to fry in this world, so I mean, eventually we'll have a utopia, but I think a lot of it will be AI assisted, right? Most of the data out there, let's talk about music. Most of the music out there is digital, right? Very little of it is actually on vinyl. I mean, even though there's a resurgence of that, most of the music is digital. Most of it is stored online, which means it is transmitted across the wires, which means if we had AI, we could recognize those bytes. Used to have a program, Black Duck software, I think it was called, when I worked at DST many years ago. But their solution would look at your entire code base and pattern match it against other code bases to tell you what parts you copied.
No.
Yeah. I think we will probably have something like that in the future that will it's the police, the digital police that are going to watch and see when a stolen car drives by, a stolen song drives by, Right. I don't know. That's my vision for the future. That's what we need, right? We need a way to control this. And right now it's just Wild West out there. There are no sheriffs.
So what have you read? I know some of the things that you follow, do you follow the Futurist? It's a website called, they track, people who are considered to be future thinkers. And
well, I follow Ray Kurzweil. I listen to Elon Musk, Singularity University. So I'm interested in people that have intelligent people that can estimate what the future is going to look like.
So in your research, what are the likely technologies that we would embed in us as people?
I don't know for sure, but I'm going to guess that we will have insurance embedded monitors that will tell us, will tell the insurance company, whether or not we should go and seek treatment, right? Because I think it all comes back to that. Somebody's got to pay for this.
Right.
And if you go out and you get drunk every night, or let's say you're taking some drugs that are harmful to your health, those things will show up and we will have a wearable in there. It'll probably be opt-in at first, right? But much like the opt-in sensors that you can put in your car for your insurance company, or like there was one that you just installed on your phone.
Receive a 40% discount on your health insurance if you allow us to inject you with a...
Sure. Receive a 15% discount on your electricity bill if you put our device in there that now monitors your house, and by the way can higher or raise your temperature or lower it
based on what they think you should be,
based on what is needed for the power grid. But also, you've sold your control, right? And I don't have one. I failed to sign up for that when KCP&L was offering them. My buddy did sign up. But I would like to have a Nest, something that would adjust the temperature and keep it there for me. If I could go back in time, I'd probably let them give me one so that they can monitor my house.
But there is this kind of like through line where I can see people, it's all about control, right? Is that if I want to allow you to inject me for the trade-off of receiving a lower insurance rate, that's me giving up control.
You're selling it.
If you're not a person who likes to relinquish control, then you can't benefit from any of those things.
Exactly. Yep. You get to miss out, but you've chosen to.
Right.
And there's people that have chosen not to invest in Bitcoin.
Right. But I don't want to sound ageist to say that most old people don't want to give up control, but they are less inclined to.
I don't think young people want to give up control. I think they're just more readily apt to turn a blind eye to it. for whatever reason. Either they just don't understand it, or they think it's probably not going to be that bad because everybody's doing it, or.
But it's really not even an age thing. More as like it's a. I don't want to say. I think of your son, like Tyler, right? If you went to Tyler and you said, "Hey, Tyler, you could save health insurance by 20% if we inject you with this thing," would Tyler do that?
It depends. Tyler would probably be more likely to do it if he could see the data himself, because he's very into making sure that he's optimizing his health and optimizing his workout and that kind of thing. But in general, giving away control, I think he's more likely to do it than people my age. And I've heard, even widely, that the younger generation that grew up with social media are far more likely to not think that privacy is a problem. They're used to not having any privacy.
But I think, what I was getting at was, I don't think it's necessarily an age thing, more than what type of person are you? Are you a type of person to relinquish control or not?
I'm not going to argue with that, because I think you're right. But I also think that regardless of age, if you have lived with technology and the internet and digitization of a lot of the things that used to not be digital, you're more familiar with it, and you are more apt to turn a blind eye, or to not realize that you're losing control, to think that you never had control in the first place. Like, there's a lot of people that won't vote just because they think, well, my vote's not going to count anyway. Right? I don't know what those numbers are, but if you can convince yourself something isn't bad and you want to go throughout your life, you can. And I think there's far more younger people, I think they're younger because they have grown up with it. And they haven't been burnt by, having their identity stolen yet and those kind of things. So right. It's not an age thing, but it is a familiarity thing. And
right.
I'm going to guess there's probably more young people that fall into that category.
Sure.
So, Matt, we're at 2 hours and 18 minutes. I think we ought to wrap it up. It's been a really good conversation. I've enjoyed talking to you. And
all right. So on to episode 7.
Next time. Yes, sir. All right.
Bye.
See ya.